Hey, Foot Clan, we've got a big announcement.
Huge. Big.
We're excited to let you know that we're partnering with the American Cancer Society and the NFL to support Crucial Catch in 2018. But what does that mean? That means that a portion of every Ultimate Draft Kit purchase will benefit the American Cancer Society's Crucial Catch partnership with the NFL, so you can do your part and win your league. So check it out, ultimatedraftkit.com.
Hey, it's Ronald Jones II, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and you're listening to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast, coming to you from Draft.com Studios with your hosts, Andy Holloway, Jason Moore, and Mike Wright.
Welcome in. The Fantasy Footballers Podcast shall begin.
It's begun. It began like 30 seconds ago.
It already happened. Welcome in, Andy, Mike, and Jason, Brooks and company here. The Fantasy Footballers back again Wednesday, August 8th, and we have a great show for you. You heard it at the top. We're very excited to announce that we have partnered with the American Cancer Society and the NFL and their Crucial Catch program, and we're going to be donating a portion of every Ultimate Draft Kit sale. And this is important stuff. This is a way that we can give back and help the fight against cancer. So we're super excited about that partnership. It's going to last through the entire offseason, the whole Ultimate Draft Kit season, and
even into the regular season. We think it's a good cause, and we want to give back. And we know that the Foot Clan are good people, and so it's exciting. It's pretty cool that we're able to do that.
Yeah, it's what it's all about. So we have a great show. As I said, we've got the NFC South breakdown today. We've got some stack attack.
Oh,
yeah, that's what I was waiting for.
Yes.
I'm always waiting for Billy Joel.
Hey.
That's how I live my life.
You ought to know
by now.
Yeah. I apologize for nothing.
We have an interview with Ronald Jones. You heard him on the intro to the show. Rookie running back for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We'll talk to him at the end of the show. And so it's jam-packed. I mean, happy Jeff Fisher Day.
Oh,
it's 8/8/2018. Wasn't there some Jeff Fisher news yesterday?
Yeah, he's going to be
some way.
He's going to be calling a game, at least one that I've heard of. Yeah, and the results and the reviews are already in. Mediocre at best.
Oh, come on.
I would say he'll be exactly average.
50-50 on all of his takes.
Yeah.
So
sorry, Jeff.
Let's start. By the way, you can follow us on Twitter at the FF Ballers. We're on YouTube, youtube.com/thefantasyfootballers. What were you doing with YouTube yesterday on Twitter, Mike?
Oh, what was I doing?
Yeah, I want to know. I mean, if it's still available to people, I want to know.
You know what? We'll run it back one more.
One more day?
One more day. I've got a copy of Madden 19 on the PS4 and the Xbox to give away. And the way that you enter, you go subscribe to the YouTube, you go ring that bell so you get notifications, and then on today's video, you leave your Twitter handle. And then I will be randomly selecting a winner by the end of today.
Sweet.
This is good. This is good. I've had a chance to play the new Madden.
It's downloaded. I am ready. When I told my son that we got Madden 19, he proceeded to have about 5 minutes worth of karate kicks and air chops because he's so pumped.
Amazing.
Now, did I make a mistake, Mike? Because I got it on PS4 and you have it on Xbox.
Yeah.
So we can't play each other?
Doing mine on Xbox as well.
To be fair, you did not make a mistake because I don't want to have to do that to you.
Oh, come on.
And destroy you.
Well, I believe that you probably would. All right. Let's jump right into the quick question, which is indeed the stack attack. The quick question of the day is, what is your favorite quarterback, wide receiver stack to draft? So keep in mind, this is not the best wide receiver and quarterback in football. This is favorite to draft because you're considering things like draft position and upside and things
And where
like that.
you can draft these players.
Yeah.
Because we don't want everyone's answer to be Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers.
That's accurate.
Yeah,
Or
That would be my favorite stack if I could get that one.
Yeah,
Sure.
if they all cost the same. But if you
or Deshaun Watson and DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah. Oh, I'd love it.
and
It'd be
those
great.
quarterbacks are going to cost you a lot. They're going to cost you a 4th, 5th round pick to grab Aaron Rodgers, even higher in a lot of home leagues to grab someone like Aaron Rodgers. For me, I build this approach backwards. I look at what late round quarterbacks I really, really like that I'm planning to draft this season, and do they have a number 1 wide receiver that I think has a good value? That would be Phillip Rivers, who I like late in the draft, and he's got Keenan Allen. His target share is always up there when he's on the field. I expect him to be a monster this year. And of all the top guys, Keenan Allen has the ability to go into that tier with the Julios and the Odell Beckhams this season.
He does.
And he's clearly going to be the cheapest of them. He's the bottom of that tier or the top of the next. And I think you stack him up with Phillip Rivers, and you're going to have happy fantasy
days.
points.
Happy days.
Yeah, that's my favorite stack. When Jason said, "Hey, you got to get your favorite stack in," I said, "It's Keenan Rivers," and he said, "No,
Taken.
That's mine."
The seat's taken.
So I'm on record. That's my favorite stack. But the other one I was going to throw out, Marvin Jones, Matthew Stafford.
I thought about that one.
And it's because, like Jason, I'm looking at the late round quarterback that I can get in the double-digit area in my home leagues, and he's going to be a plug-and-play quarterback, one that I will rarely have to consider going to the waiver wire and streaming. I know that Stafford's going to work out. I can grab some other quarterbacks later, but they might not work out. Stafford will, and Marvin Jones, while he, I think, over-succeeded a little bit this past year, he's still a dominant touchdown
I don't know if
guy.
I've heard that word before. Over-succeeded.
I like it. Jason Moore.
I don't have any
approval.
problem with it. I just never heard that phrase. He over-succeeded. He succeeded, and then he did it he did a little bit extra.
He was really successful.
He threw in some extra success.
I will say this on Marvin Jones. We've talked about how I doubt that the touchdowns stay where they were last year for Marvin Jones, and so we are all expecting a little bit of regression for Marvin Jones, but that's built into his ADP.
Yes.
He's not being drafted. He finished as, depending on your
He was a
scoring
wide
system,
receiver 1.
Yeah, 11 or 9. He's not being drafted anywhere near the 9th wide receiver or the 11th wide receiver off the board. So he is a value because I think he's being drafted where he will probably finish, but he's got a ceiling that is obviously higher than that.
Yeah, I am going to shock you with my answer.
I believe the word you were looking for was discuss.
Here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. If you are eating, swallow, put the food down. If you're drinking,
Pause the podcast before you finish.
if you're driving, pull over to the side of the road.
I want every listener out there
This is true. This is not.
I want
a
every
lie.
listener out there to tune in right now. And for those of you that have been with the fantasy footballers for multiple years, I want you to harness the power of the trust built up by this show in your innermost being. And I want you to trust me.
At Andy Holloway on Twitter, by the way.
My stack is going to be the announcement. It's going to be the beginning of my campaign for Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod Taylor and Jarvis Landry are my stack. Tyrod Taylor is going to be talked about by me for the rest of this offseason. I believe that the undrafted Tyrod Taylor is a steal in fantasy drafts. Tyrod Taylor had 7 top 12 weeks last season. He had another 5 in the top 24. That is 12 of 16 weeks where he was hyper-relevant for fantasy. He has elite level talent. Jarvis Landry is one of the best wide receivers in football. He is a target vacuum. Josh Gordon is one of the most talented wide receivers in football. We'll talk about Antonio Callaway in a little bit, but he's very talented. They have Todd Haley that has arrived in Cleveland, and the world, you get a built-in value on Browns players. That is the way it works in fantasy football when you go 0-16. And Jarvis Landry is being drafted at a very reasonable level now. I believe he's late 4th round for Jarvis Landry because of the regression concerns. You cannot look, regression concerns are real for Jarvis Landry. They're starting to fade away from me. He is too talented and too much of a target hog not to play that same role in that offense. They spent too much money. He's too committed to that team. I also thought this was a nice transition into discussing whether you watched Hard Knocks at all last night, which I did get a chance to watch the entire episode.
I have not gotten to watch Hard Knocks, and I saw the Jarvis Landry speech. The man is passionate. I'll give him that. And
passionate and profane.
Look, you get
not on brand for us, but
you get your message across how you get it across. That's what we always say. And that's certainly
flip-flops and profanity. That was the method.
Unfortunately for Tyrod Taylor, he does not get to play the Dolphins or the Jets twice this year.
He does get
which account for 4 of his great weeks.
Yes, so he did what he's supposed to do.
Here's what I'll say in support of your stack here, Andy. I think Tyrod Taylor is actually a really good, if not a great piece to draft late, because if you're into the streaming quarterback, I don't always need to have the guy. You bring up Stafford. Stafford's great because you draft him and you might not need to stream the position. Stafford's going to be fine the whole year. Now, Tyrod, if you draft Tyrod, I am 100% confident that you'll have to stream the position at some point. I can't imagine him playing the whole season.
I think he plays the whole year.
I know you do.
I'm just saying that now, just so that people understand, because you both believe there's no chance of him playing the full season.
0%.
Correct.
And I believe he will.
But that doesn't matter when you start. I mean, stream the position, you're fine. If he gets replaced, go to the waiver wire. I will say this. Tyrod Taylor will absolutely be a valuable fantasy asset because, he always is. He runs the ball. He's got good weapons, during the beginning of the year where he is the starter. So, I don't draft Tyrod Taylor in a best ball league because I don't think I'm getting 16 games. But in a redraft
He's
league,
also never played 16 games.
In a redraft league, I would definitely be willing to start the season with Tyrod as my quarterback come week 1.
All right, before we get into the NFC South breakdown, I do want to mention a piece of Browns news, unfortunate, especially in light of the Corey Coleman trade, Corey Coleman was featured frequently last night on Hard Knocks from a Todd Haley yelling at him standpoint.
Oh.
So maybe the writing was
I got to catch up.
The writing was on the wall in that episode where outside of Jarvis Landry, there was a lot of letdown on the field for a while, hence the Jarvis Landry speech. But, yeah, Coleman wasn't performing. A lot of frustration. But Antonio Callaway, 4th-round wide receiver, was cited for marijuana possession on Sunday morning. He was also driving with a suspended license.
Come on, man.
And if you're not familiar with Callaway's history, his past is very checkered. That's why he fell in the draft.
That's why he didn't play college football last year.
Right, yes, he didn't play football for a year. A lot of NFL teams were reportedly, they had him off their draft board. So the fact that he didn't make it out of his first training camp ever without a problem is bad news. Now, there's the upside side of that, right? This checkered past, the fact that he fell, and the fact that he was still drafted in the 4th round shows he's clearly a hyper-talented player. It's that risk-reward. Josh Gordon, he's super talented, but comes with risk. Right now, it's not a good start, especially right after, you get your opportunity. Corey Coleman is traded. Here's your chance to say, all right, I'm stepping up. And you're gonna take.
He had a job.
Back.
He had a job for the taking, and
now it is a misdemeanor right now. This is not a huge. This is not like something where I think he's gonna lose.
The misdemeanor is gonna turn into missed a game or two.
Oh, yes. 2. This will be a 2 game, but it may not be this season. For example, Aaron Jones. We know that his incident with the law happened last year, but his suspension is this year. The NFL lets it play out a little bit, but he will be hit with a 2-game suspension.
I'll throw this in there as well. There was a little bit of insight on Hard Knocks as to kind of the team and Josh Gordon from the perspective that Coach Hugh Jackson sat down with Todd Haley and the other coaches and basically said, sometimes we don't know how much the team knows versus the fantasy player
Right.
or what our expectations are for Josh Gordon. I mean, this is a player that's missed 43 of the last 48 games for the Cleveland Browns. Hugh Jackson basically sat down and told Todd Haley, he said, we're not going to have Josh at the beginning of this camp. That's it. And he didn't want to make a promise as to when he was coming back. Josh Gordon texted Hugh Jackson during the show. Hugh Jackson talked to Dorsey and said, look, he's going to be back soon. They kind of seem to not know exactly when Josh Gordon's going to be back in camp, other than they expect him back in camp when the timing is right, and we don't know how much of that coincides with a desire to keep him out of the limelight at the beginning, at least, of Hard Knocks.
And on top of that, the Browns did not put him on, what I believe, the NFI list, which would have a huge impact on Josh Gordon being able to be a restricted free agent. So he would not accrue a season of eligibility for his potential free agency. So the Browns
and the trade of Coleman also enforced that they believe he's back.
Just saying that the Browns they're siding with Gordon. So I think that also speaks very positively to the way that the Browns are feeling about Gordon being back sooner than later.
All right. Well, I think it's time. By the way, Brooks has let me know through verified means that we apparently we've said over succeeded before, Brooks.
Yes,
and we made fun of it then.
Yes, yeah.
So
as soon
we
as
are
you guys said
consistent.
Oh yeah.
Okay, cool.
Let's get divisional.
All right, this is the final divisional breakdown, is it not, Brooks?
That's correct.
The final breakdown.
Thank you, Jason.
You're welcome. I'm so sorry.
I thought we
Everyone
talked
out there.
about this, Jason.
You did not over-succeed with that.
That was just a regular success.
It was nice, though, because the silence came and then you broke in.
Well, you guys stopped talking. I got to sing.
I'm going to stop talking more if I get that. The NFC South, we're breaking down the Saints, the Panthers, the Falcons, the Buccaneers on the show today. Last year, the Saints and Panthers tied at 11-5. The Saints won the division. The Falcons were 10-6. The Buccaneers at 5-11, the disappointing year. It's probably going to be another disappointing year for the Buccaneers. This is a very competitive division. I expect that we'll probably see 3 teams make the playoffs out of this division. And it's been one that has had a lot of turnover in recent years. You had a monster year from the Falcons. The Super Bowl season, you had the Panthers go to the Super Bowl the season before that. And the Saints last year were great, a great offense.
Yeah.
They scored 448 points, which was just about 100 more than the Panthers. So we'll kick it off with them.
Saints.
Let's talk about the New Orleans Saints. This past offseason, Jason shed a tear as Kobe Fleener was jettisoned from the roster, tied in Kobe Fleener.
They literally put him in a seat and ejected him out of the building.
Yes, sometimes you need to do that. They made him push the button. It was
Whereabouts of Kobe Fleener currently?
unknown, but probably in the lower atmosphere somewhere. Wide receiver Willie Snead, wide receiver Brandon Coleman. Recently, Snead was signed by the Ravens or was traded for?
No, he was signed by the Ravens.
So he was a free agent, and he's gone, and Brandon Coleman is gone now as well. Brandon Coleman always felt like a placeholder.
Yeah, he really did. I mean,
he's been on the team forever, though. He just kept sticking around.
He was a big, kind of slower slot guy who did not seem like he belonged in the slot. The role was never it was never really replaced.
If you need
from
another wideout.
A couple years ago when Willie Snead was great in that role, they've not been able to replace him, and I think that's what the hope is here with Cam Meredith.
Yes, Cam Meredith's one of the big off-season acquisitions. He was very, very good a couple of years ago, got injured at the beginning of last season. There was a lot of hype around him in fantasy football, but he steps into an important role potentially in this offense opposite Michael Thomas, Ted Ginn. I want to make sure that if you are just joining us here in August and you're not aware, you're certainly aware of what Alvin Kamara did last year. You're certainly aware of how good Mark Ingram was last year and how much they ran the ball in New Orleans. But maybe you're not aware of Mark Ingram's suspension, and he's missing the first 4 games. So Terrence West was added as depth at the running back position. This was a team that rushed the ball for 129 yards a game. That was 5th most in the league. They passed for 261 yards a game, 5th most in the league, a dynamic offense. Where do we begin? Where do we start the conversation about the New Orleans Saints? Because this is a team that has a lot of fantasy value.
Yeah, it definitely does. I mean, last season, I think you have to start at the running back position because that was what was so dominant and different last season. I don't expect for the running game to be as successful as it was last year, nor the passing game to be as unrelied on as it was last year. But you have to keep
fifth most passing yards per game.
You have to keep in mind.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, but I'm speaking of scoring, fantasy, touchdowns.
Okay.
I mean, Drew Brees' touchdowns were very low for him. And you've talked in this offseason, Mike, how you love
I'm
Drew
just
Brees.
sitting over here. I've got my cape
You're
on
just
for Drew Brees.
Yeah, you're waiting to talk about the quarterback position. The running game has always been very valuable for fantasy from the Saints as a team. They pass the ball to the running back position more than anyone over the last, in the entire Drew Brees era. And because Drew Brees is getting older, you see what they do in the draft, the free agents they're signing, they are now focused on defense and running the ball more than they have been in years past, where Drew Brees always had to throw a ton of touchdowns to get back into the game because they were down by 3 scores. That's not the case now. But when you look at the breakdown of Mark Ingram, who has always been my guy, literally was one of my 3 my guys last year, it's a scary proposition drafting Mark Ingram with that suspension. They have a week 6 bye week. He's suspended the first 4 weeks. So think about it this way. By October 20th, you will have had 1 game out of Mark Ingram.
Hey.
Yeah, that's not great. I think fantasy owners, that's one of the biggest questions here is when is the value of Mark Ingram? When does that overwhelm the risk of Mark Ingram?
And for Mark Ingram, I'm still, depending on my team, people have asked, when is the earliest you're considering Mark Ingram? And it's 5th round for me because I believe that when Mark Ingram comes back, he comes back right to his role on a dominant team. And even if Alvin Kamara is the 1A, I don't think it's a 1-2 situation. I think it's back to really splitting time, and Mark Ingram will be a very valuable second half running back.
Mark Ingram has been the leading rusher for the New Orleans Saints for 5 of the last 6 years. I'm going to put the softball on the tee for you. Okay?
All right. I hope I don't miss.
Because you want to talk about Drew Brees. I'm gonna set it up there for you.
All right.
I disagree with the contention that this is not going to be as good, if not better, of an offense. Under Sean Payton, who started as the head coach of the New Orleans Saints in 2006, the offensive rank of the Saints is as follows. Okay? 5, 12, 1, 1, 12, 2, 3, 10, 9, 8, 2, 4 in total points. The year they won the Super Bowl was the second most points scored in the Sean Payton era, which goes back now 12 seasons. This is a team that, while their defense is going to be essential to winning the Super Bowl, Sean Payton has no desire to let up on offense. So that would be the historical argument for why Drew Brees will return to fantasy value. Now,
yes.
The argument against is related to age. It's related to total pass attempts last year. He had arguably his best season ever.
Best completion percentage of all time.
But how do you overcome fears about, look, they had great success last season, right? They were 11-5. They won the division. They relied on the run game. They relied on their defense. What's your counterpoint for Drew Brees? Is it based in history?
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought it up because over the era of Drew Brees in New Orleans, besides this past year, there's 2 other times where they had a dominant defense. You're talking 2010, where their defense was 4th best in allowing yards, and in that season, Drew Brees was the quarterback 6. In 2013, once again, 4th in points, 4th in yards for the defense, quarterback 2 on the season. I don't care how good the defense is. I care how good Drew Brees is. And Drew Brees was still an elite quarterback this past year. The past 3 years, the passing touchdown to rushing touchdown ratio has been 2-1. This last year, you had a fluky 1-1 pass to touchdown ratio. It is a complete outlier to me. Like I said, he set the NFL best completion percentage. It comes down to me. to let's look at deep touchdowns. Last year, there were 5 passers that had 30-plus deep completions. 3 of those 5 guys had 10 or more touchdowns on those completions. Drew Brees only had 5. It's just one of those things. If you remember the year that Calvin Johnson was tackled about 10 times on the 2-yard line, it just happens sometimes in football. Drew Brees is elite. He is going to return to form.
All right, you swung. You hit the ball. Jason, I'm setting it up for you now. I'm putting it on the tee. People seem to believe this story about Drew Brees because he's the 5th quarterback off the board right now in the 6th round. You're not getting value based on his performance last year.
No.
Are you? I mean, I guess that's the question.
You're definitely
I think
not
it's
getting
split.
No, you're definitely not getting value based on
You have to draft
his
him ahead of
underperformance
Wentz,
last year.
Newton a round later, Cousins 2 rounds later, Luck 2 rounds later, and then Stafford, Rivers, Ryan, you can draft 3 rounds later.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is this. Drew Brees right now is being drafted as the 5th quarterback off the board, and that is his ceiling. Now, he's had many years above the number 5.
5 is his ceiling?
5 is his ceiling in
That's
2018.
nonsense.
At 39 years old,
That is
with
nonsense.
this good defense, he is not. I would easily water bet that he will not be a top 4 quarterback
he
this
just
year.
changed from 5 to 4.
No, I'm saying he's top 5 is his
and-
ceiling. He can get to 5. He's not going to be ahead of
Well,
5.
I mean, Tom Brady was 40 last year.
Yes.
So the age argument.
Yeah, make it against me. Say, but that's very different.
Mike, are you willing to go?
Top 5?
Yeah.
Yes, because it's Drew Brees.
So, Jason, are you on board with that?
Oh, I suggested it.
Water bet.
This will give Brooks a chance to use the new Water Bet video graphic on the YouTube channel. So, I mean, really, you guys have done a service to the world.
Very nice. Yeah, I mean, look, Drew Brees, he finished as the quarterback 12. He was a quarterback 1 this past season. That's great. And I do expect he will have more touchdowns this year than last year. But he also only had 4 weeks the whole season. There's 16 games. He only had 4 weeks where he was actually in the top 12 during that week. He destroyed you last year. He just didn't need to have those big games, and I don't think he's going to need to have them this year.
I'm not leaving the Saints. We're going to stay here. We're going to talk about Alvin Kamara and expectations. We're going to talk about Cameron Meredith, but we're going to press a quick pause button to thank Pristine Auction for supporting this podcast. Pristine Auction is the best place to get autographed sports memorabilia. I get a message. This is not a lie. This is not a line. I get a message pretty much every day, every other day, from somebody who thanks me. Yesterday, for letting them know about Pristine Auction. Yesterday, I had posted on Reddit. Somebody replied to my thread on Reddit, completely unrelated to the thread, and just said, I just got a Keenan Allen jersey for $63. Thank you so much for telling me about Pristine Auction. People don't understand. We have an Alvin Kamara jersey signed, authentic jersey on the wall, an authentic signature, Pristine Auction. We get a deal. Todd Gurley signed photo yesterday, $43. Josh Gordon signed photo, $37. Corey Davis signed jersey went for $40. That is asinine. That's crazy. And these are all JSA authentic signatures. You've got to check them out. PristineAuction.com, longtime partner of the show.
Yeah, and look, another really important partner that we are very close with is Fantasy Champs. And here's why it's important. Because you're listening to this show and you're going to be a fantasy champ. Your league needs awesome trophies, and there is a gold standard, and that's Fantasy Champs. If you look at the trophies, if you inspect the trophies that we have, in our set that we use in our league, they're truly the best trophies that are out there. I love their gold trophy, their perennial gold trophy. I think that is my personal favorite. You got to check them out. If you use the promo code BALLERS, you can save 10%, but this is the time of the year where you get your league ready. You get that perennial trophy. You get it, displayed at your draft. You can get custom fantasy football jerseys to wear at your draft. You can get the best fantasy draft board if you're doing a live draft. It's all at Fantasy Champs. You're a fantasy champ. Go to fantasychamps.com and improve your league.
Yeah, I mean, the swag of fantasy football is kind of just connected to the game of fantasy football, right? So it's important that partner is right.
I don't know why
for our listeners.
I should be at all times wearing all my fantasy champ rings. During the show.
Sure.
I gotta start doing that.
Sure.
All right, let's talk about Alvin Kamara.
Oh, Super Camario.
Last year, the invincibility star, it was on all season, pretty much. And
Except one game.
yeah, you're talking about the concussion?
Yeah, well, he was not invincible that week.
No, that week he the star went off. He
Yep.
got hit by a Koopa shell, and he went down early in the game. But Alvin Kamara, I think people are on every. Well, there's two thoughts, right? He is this. He is great. He's got Mark Ingram missing the first 4 games. There's no reason why he can't be dominant. And then there's the regression fears. There's the health fears. There's the what do we
Efficiency
really
fears.
have? People brought up C.J. Spiller's monstrous season. We don't get the opportunity. You don't get to look at Alvin Kamara and go, "What did he do over the last 5 years?" You get to say, "What did he do last year?" So Alvin Kamara is the ceiling for 2018, the number 1 overall running back. Mike, is that a possibility for Alvin Kamara?
I would say no.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think Kamara, even with, I believe he will get an uptick in volume, but even with that, I am on the side that we've seen so few seasons.
Is this the best
like
season
Kamara
he ever
did.
has?
Probably.
You think so?
Yeah, he was
81 receptions.
It was outrageous,
but only 120 carries.
right. But what's his yards per carry?
6.5.
What's his yards per reception?
I'm sorry, 6.1 yards per carry, 10.2 yards per reception. That'll stay. 81 receptions for 1,000 yards is very, very
yes,
in the cards for Alvin Kamara.
it is very, very possible. But over 6 yards a carry, he's an incredible talent. I just am not going to put my chips on someone repeating that or coming anywhere close to that. We've seen
that would be
basically-
Jamal Charles.
Yes,
You
and
would be putting your
that's
chips
why I was
on
gonna
him
bring
being
up-
Jamal Charles.
And could he beat Jamal Charles? Sure. But there's only been one Jamal Charles.
Yes.
So that's why I don't think top 1 is available to him when Gurley and Le'Veon Bell.
What about bottom 1?
bottom 1?
It's a good point, Andy.
I mean, you said he couldn't be top 1. I want to know if he could be bottom 1, maybe middle 1.
Those he could be, certainly. if my argument against him being at the top is accurate.
You got to lean in.
Yes.
I for what it's worth, I agree with Mike. I don't see finishing as the number 1 running back
Right.
in the cards for Alvin Kamara. He is. I expect him to have a great year. I really do. And the reason I expect him to have a great year is because of the Saints, because of the system, because of Sean Payton
As
and
a
Drew
quarterback
Brees.
is elite.
They use the running back so well. It's not just that they use him a lot in the passing game. They scheme so well for the running back. So I think he will succeed. But at the same time, he's my scariest first-round running back. I think I've come to that place where I just, even when my rankings say he's the next guy up, I'm going with the volume of the guy a little bit down in my rankings over the hope that Alvin Kamara is as efficient or close to as efficient as he was last year. Whenever you've got a guy who had 120 carries last year.
Now, he had 120 carries, but those first 3 weeks or so before the bye, and they traded Adrian Peterson away, he was very uninvolved.
If you take away the first 2 games and you look at his 16-game pace from that point on, it would be 128 carries.
They start the season, the four non-Ingram games. The Buccaneers at home. The Browns at home. So as in the Saints are at home in both those games. Then they play the Falcons and Giants. Even if you believe that it's unsustainable, isn't he going to dominate for 4 weeks? Couldn't you trade him at that point?
I wouldn't trade him. If he's dominating for 4 games, I don't think there's any way.
Well, with Ingram coming back, if you say that you don't believe that,
Sure.
I mean, the volume's going to be there for 4 weeks, is it not?
Well, I don't expect it to be an outrageous swing.
Okay.
I think Terrence West is going to get on the field.
Cameron Meredith is undrafted. Do you want him?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and that's it's a Brandon Coleman type of thing that they were able to waive him, and maybe they'll bring him back. But I think that they believe that Cameron Meredith is ready. For Michael Thomas, Michael Thomas is one of the reasons why I believe that Drew Brees will return. Michael Thomas went from 9 touchdowns to 5 touchdowns, and that was not because of opportunity. He had more targets. He had more receptions. He had more targets in the red zone. He had more targets in the 10 zone. The touchdowns just didn't go Drew Brees' way. And I have been on record that I love Michael Thomas very, very much as an elite level wide receiver this season.
Panthers.
Let's talk about the Carolina Panthers. They were 11-5 last year. Cam Newton. I've been pretty vocal about Cam Newton this year. I think he's the best combination of upside and value in fantasy drafts. 7th round quarterback right now with number 1 quarterback potential. He has a new weapon in DJ Moore, wide receiver. And he has a weapon that ascended over the course of last season in Christian McCaffrey.
Gets Greg Olsen back.
He didn't have him last year, and Cam Newton was still a dominant force for fantasy football owners. He ran the ball. Lions going to roar, and he roared. Now, he's going to be my guy for me again this year. So Cam Newton, I'm locked and loaded. I think he's that best value, but I want to hear you guys weigh in on this team. They were the 4th best rushing team last year, 131 yards per game. They were 28th in passing yards per game. So Cam Newton and company, expectations for this team, where are the fantasy values? They lose Andrew Norwell on the offensive line. We cannot underestimate the loss. And if you do want to underestimate it, go talk to Andy Dalton.
Well, and we've been talking about Pro Football Focus and their rankings. Last year, the Panthers ended as the 10th best offensive line. Coming into the season, they have them at 21. So they are factoring in the loss of Norwell by a large amount. I'll start with the value because that's what the word I was hearing. Yeah. Even with the offensive line getting the massive downgrade, the value of this team is still C.J. Anderson. And for me, that's because the Jonathan Stewart has moved on. He is now a New York Giant, but he still received a ton of work, a frustrating amount of work for Christian McCaffrey owners. He had 206 touches on the year, which was 198 carries. So I expect C.J. Anderson up close to that 200 carry mark. Now, can he do something with it? That's the question. But finding
you're not hype training him, but I'm just. There's been a lot of talk, 25, 30 touches for Christian McCaffrey, Mike.
Yes, and Christian McCaffrey getting 30 touches a game, it would be a tremendous mistake, and you would be not utilizing Christian McCaffrey to his fullest to overwork him like that. So I expect C.J. Anderson up near 200 carries for a running back that you are drafting. Where is he currently going? Does anyone have that in front of them?
I do not.
I've got it. Back of the 8th round. So back of the 8th, early 9th. A running back that, in my opinion, is nearly guaranteed over 170 carries. Those guys don't exist in that range. And the reason he is there, one, people just don't like C.J. Anderson. I understand it. But he was a 1,000-yard rusher last year.
One of 9 only. And he was also near the league lead in yards after contact.
Once they gave C.J. Anderson the ball over the second half of the season, he proved once again that he is a good running back in this league. And people are so caught up in the Christian McCaffrey hype train that they are letting C.J. Anderson fall to the back of the 8th round. Tremendous value.
Yeah, I agree that C.J. Anderson is a value. For where he's being drafted, if he doesn't pan out, that's fine. If he does pan out, you're going to have a really good value. He is so far and away superior to what Jonathan Stewart was last year. And when we talk about Christian McCaffrey, there's all this upside hopeful he's going to get more carries. There's a lot of reasons also to worry about him, right? DJ Moore, Greg Olsen. Are they going to take some of those valuable targets away from Christian McCaffrey when he was so heavily targeted last year? The fact that Jonathan Stewart has been upgraded into C.J. Anderson this year. Now, I said all that to basically say I am actually a believer. If I had to put my odds on, I believe that Christian McCaffrey will be used as a workhorse back. I don't know that they should, but when I go back, Norv Turner, when we always look into the offensive coordinators and the systems and, try to put everything into proper context. When you have a guy with over 20 years with so many different teams, so many different players. You have such a large sample size that you can really get a grasp for what a coach does. Because he's switched teams so many times, you see, does he change to his personnel? Does he not? Et cetera, et cetera. And over and over and over and over, he is almost always a one-back guy. Now, for some context, he had some pretty darn good, Emmitt Smith, LaDainian Tomlinson.
I would be a one-back coach
Adrian
if I had
Peterson.
them.
It's unbelievable the running backs he's had. But Christian McCaffrey was a top 10 pick. And so if Norv is saying these things,
The man who picked Christian McCaffrey top 10 is no longer with the team.
sure, but my point is he was valued to be that coming out of
He
college.
was also great last year, guys.
Yes.
The storyline and the
Great in the
narrative.
passing game.
No, I'm going to bring this up. I want people
top
to
12.
remember something. Last year, all I kept hearing and kept getting thrown at me was Cam Newton doesn't throw to the running back. And all I kept saying was he will if he has a good one. And he did. He threw it. And it worked. They were 11-5. They were a great team. What they did worked. These are not non-pliable robots. If you have a great player in a great position, suddenly you're great at throwing to the running back. That's the equation. And you're great when you throw to Christian McCaffrey, including in the red zone.
And I believe that Norv Turner will try to use Christian McCaffrey as he used the comp that I see is the LaDainian Tomlinson, Michael Turner years with San Diego. And that was, Michael Turner was involved. He was a good backup.
Right. He does need to be better between the tackles, and if their offensive line is downgraded, that could be a challenge.
Yeah, and I like that you bring up the point, though. If you have a great player, you get them involved. That's Greg Olsen. In the games where Greg Olsen played, Christian McCaffrey had 2 fewer receptions per game, nearly 3 targets fewer per game. That's a lot of opportunity when you are the pass-catching running back. So I'm not saying he won't have value for fantasy, but I think that he's overvalued.
You know my retort, though, to that, right? I don't have to tell you it.
What?
He was
share it with the people.
He was a rookie beginning his career. Those are the games that Greg Olsen were really active for, right? So I don't read a lot into a very small sample size with Greg Olsen involved in the offense when Christian McCaffrey wasn't trusted in the passing game yet. That's my only counterpoint. DJ Moore.
Wait, so you're saying that the games – Greg Olsen was a second-half guy. Greg Olsen missed the entire first half of the season.
When did he come back?
Week 11 is when he came back the first time, and then he played 13 through 16.
He was hurt before game 1?
He was hurt in week 2.
Okay. So I was
that
thinking
does not fit your narrative.
It does for week 1. If that's part of the sample size, right?
Okay.
Week 1 and week 2 are both in your sample, right? Because he got hurt during week 2. So that's my only point, is that I think that it is a very small sample. It is not a point that lands on deaf ears, though. If you have more people to throw to that you trust, you probably aren't going to throw to one guy. So I get that.
Right.
Let's move on, though. Let's talk about Devin Funchess. He emerged out of necessity last season. They spent a high draft pick in DJ Moore.
Wait,
he got a cool nickname last year.
Who emerged?
This guy.
Devin S. Scrumptious.
I love Michael Keaton.
Not going to be as scrumptious this year.
No, he is not.
This is the food has been left out.
The chocolate is melted.
The chocolate is melted.
Scrumdiddlyumptious bar.
Look, unless you have injury, I don't see how Devin Funchess has the year he had last year, because he's not built to be the number 1. He's built to be a tight end.
I actually think he's a pretty good number 2 wide receiver.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so with
I'd take
DJ
that.
Moore coming to the team, I have DJ Moore slotted in to immediately year 1 take over the number 1 wide receiver role, take it away to be out-targeted, to out-target Devin Funchess. That's how I have this projected this season.
Breaking news.
All right, big news, guys. This show is going to be extra long.
Oh,
that's the breaking news. I realize that. We've got 2 more teams to get through, and I'm not sure we can leave the Panthers yet. I do want to remind people, Curtis Samuel's coming back this year as well.
yes. It's fair.
He's been very he's coming back, but the injury is coming back from I think it's been a slow process, and I'm
wide
not
receiver
super
Curtis
wide
Samuel.
receiver Curtis Samuel, rookie last year for the Carolina Panthers.
All right, you guys, you feel comfortable moving on to Matty Ice and company?
Yep.
Falcons.
I don't want to get Mike a little. He gets a little finicky.
Oh yeah.
a
move
little
on too quick.
verklempt
Goes,
if you
"Whoa!"
move on too quick and there's somebody who wants to talk about. But I guess when you get a chance to talk about C.J. Anderson, everything is well in the
It's like,
world.
whoa, we didn't talk about Torrey Smith.
I could bring him up. He's an upgrade for that team, mostly for Cam.
Cam Newton likes to throw the ball really
He does.
really far off his back foot, and Ted Ginn benefited from that.
Torrey Smith is no longer fast, though.
What?
I think he is.
Are you looking at his game speed?
I'm going to look that up. You guys talk Falcons.
Ooh,
I find this
a presumptive slowdown. For
Yeah, well,
Torrey
I did
Smith.
watch football.
What? Yeah, he could
You
be
had a Torrey Smith cam?
I was going to
Did
say,
you have your stopwatch out?
were you watching all untargeted receivers last year?
We can make fun of me in a second when I verify, or probably not.
Falcons.
10-6, the Atlanta Falcons squeezed into the playoffs last year. Matt Ryan, disappointed fantasy owner. Steve Sarkisian came in as the offensive coordinator last
Ruined
year.
everything.
And we all blame him for all the toils and problems, whereas we really should give credit to Jason for the obvious truth that Matt Ryan had an outlier season in 2016. So
This just in, Torrey Smith was, in anything he ran longer than 20 yards, well below the average NFL wide receiver in game speed.
yeah, because he does them
Thank
backwards.
you to airyards.com.
He does them backwards, backpedaling. That's interesting to know. I mean, we've all agreed that replacing Torrey Smith with Mike Wallace in Philadelphia was an upgrade for the
Yes.
Eagles, but they didn't really have anybody in Carolina. Is Torrey Smith better than nobody?
Sometimes there is not addition.
This just in. Mike Wallace last year, way the heck faster than Torrey Smith.
All right, well, the more you know. Torrey Smith is living off of the
How is that not a segment?
the more you know
Seriously,
segment.
we need a drop.
The MOORE. You know.
Oh,
more you
that's
know.
my last name, Mike. Did you realize that?
I did. Clearly, you did not. Because I got the pun and you didn't. Andy's writing it down.
Yeah,
because that's a great idea. Yes.
The more you know. And then we're not copying that at all. It's really a name tie-in. Very good. All right. Devonta Freeman. Does he return to greatness in 2018?
Greatness as in top 5 running back? I don't think so. Greatness as in one of the most reliable known commodities still in prime condition, yes.
One of the best offensive lines in football.
I really do like Devonta Freeman this year. When you drop into that second round area and you're deciding between a couple players, I find myself so often in mocks and in real drafts taking Devonta Freeman because he's solid. You know what you have in him. I can't imagine, barring injury, that he's not an RB1, a low-end RB1.
And to his credit, he was a running back 13, and he missed 2 games and essentially missed that third one where he was injured. So you give him his full 16 games. He was easily a running back 1 this past season. So I'm with Jason. A return to top 5, I don't see it shaking out that way, but Freeman's actually a good value.
Yeah,
right now, even in the second round.
And this is the second, last year I called for a lot of regression on the Falcons, and I'm swung back the other way. I actually think that the Falcons in 2018 will be a much better offense than the Falcons in 2017. This is the year 2 of this offensive system. You had so many balls just, that were going to Julio in the end zone that were just dropped. I mean, those things return to form. So I think this is going to be a good year for the Falcons.
Mike, how do you approach a player like Tevin Coleman? The backup running back, dynamic, a pass catcher, somebody that if they did step into the number 1 role would be probably a top 10 guy because of the volume. But how do you approach him as a fantasy owner? Because it's not always fun to draft a player that doesn't have a week-to-week defined role.
Now, it's a little bit more palatable this year. The Tevin Coleman mania has died down a little bit. He's going at the beginning of the 7th round, according to Fantasy Football Calculator.
That's a great value.
But
you like would you put him into your lineup?
In that range, you could get Marshawn, you can get Crowell, who are starters for their team. And like Andy said, the role for Coleman is undefined. Good friend of the show, J.J. Zachariason, has pointed out many times over this offseason, they are rarely are they both relevant? And I'm talking about Coleman and Freeman. If one of them has a good game, it is statistically rare that they both have a good week.
I disagree. Sorry,
you disagree with numbers?
I disagree with where he's putting the baseline of that numbers of what qualifies as good. When you're drafting a running back in the 7th round, you're not drafting an RB1. You're drafting an RB2. He had 10 games last season. Tevin Coleman had 10 games where he was an RB2 or better. Now, usually he was in that range of RB2, 19, 24, 23, 21, 23, 20. Those aren't great games, so those wouldn't show up for JJ. But if he's your RB2 or even your RB3, I'm super happy to have my third running back constantly put up numbers that are solid, that are in those
Not a bad
range.
point. Not a bad point.
And then you have the upside of, last year, where was Tevin Coleman going? I feel like it was
much
at
higher.
least fifth round.
Yeah, 5th round.
And
I love Michael Keaton.
Yeah, me too. So I actually like it. 7th round. I mean, it's hard, right? Crowell, the known starter. But if you're telling me Crowell has basically the same season Tevin Coleman had last year, where he's got 10 top 24 performances, I'm not going to be shocked. But the opportunity for Tevin Coleman to take over in the sad situation of an injury is a little exciting.
They lost Taylor Gabriel to free agency, and then he signed with the Bears. They added a rookie, maybe surprised people, by drafting arguably the highest-ranked wide receiver by some in Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley joins Julio Jones, Mohamed Sanu as pass catchers of in this offense that can be very prolific. Give me a handicap Calvin Ridley's redraft value. What are the odds that he contributes in a meaningful way? And would you rather roster Calvin Ridley with the unknown or Mohamed Sanu with the kind of what you'd call that the Brandon LaFell baseline?
That's a great question as to which one you would rather roster. I think I would rather roster in redraft. I would rather roster Mohamed Sanu.
Am I playing 4 wide receivers?
Right, yeah, because
then I'll roster Sanu.
Right, so there's no real relevance.
Am I playing 6 wide receivers?
You're probably not
so
starting
Julio
this.
Jones.
Then I will roster Ridley.
Okay, so that tells me that question. I was going to say if Julio Jones gets injured, who do you want to start?
Sanu. I do think this. I think Sanu is a great best ball pick because you are rostering 9 wide receivers, and Sanu was valuable last year. And keep in mind, it's not like Calvin Ridley is taking over for Sanu. He's taking over for Taylor Gabriel, who left the team. He's an upgrade there, but Sanu was, he had plenty of weeks where he was relevant last year.
Buccaneers.
All right, we're going to move on and talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
What about Austin Hooper?
We're saving Austin Hooper for your other podcast, Mike.
Oh, for the top 10 tight end show?
Yeah.
That's fire. I think you meant to say the top 30 tight end show.
Yeah, we're coming out with a bottom 10 tight end show. All right. It's looking rough for the Buccaneers, by my estimation. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't come out and surprise. They have a lot of weapons on offense, but you're missing Jameis Winston, starting quarterback for 3 games. And I think fantasy owners were very disappointed in Mike Evans last year relative to his draft position. So I think we have that question of whether he returns to elite form and whether he can do that temporarily with Ryan Fitzpatrick until Jameis Winston gets back into the fold. It's a tough start to the season for the Buccaneers. They have jettisoned, that'll be the word of the day. They've jettisoned Doug Martin. He's gone. They've drafted Ronald Jones II, who I am a fan of, the talent of. Jason is not. In fact, Jason has put on the hate blockers and declared him a bust on multiple occasions, much to my chagrin. But let's talk about this offense. Let's talk about the fantasy pieces. People want to know which tight end they should roster between Cameron Brate and O.J. Howard. People want to know, can they rely on Ronald Jones? What is the depth chart going to be between Peyton Barber, Ronald Jones, and then Charles Sims involved on third down? What are our expectations here, and how much are they hurt by the likelihood that this is not a winning ball club in 2018?
So here's what's interesting. I think it's rough sledding for the Buccaneers right now because this division, the Falcons, the Saints, and the Panthers are 3 contending teams. If any one of them ended up in the Super Bowl, you're not going to be surprised. But they all three have great offenses. And so for fantasy purposes, while I expect the Bucs to have a bad record at the end of the year, I think there will be value here. They're going to have to try to keep up. They're going to have to try to score with Cam and score with the Falcons.
Happened at the end of last year.
Exactly. I think Chris Godwin moving to the outside, getting involved, helps the offense. Jameis Winston, prior to the suspension, was one of those guys that I thought this is a potential year to break out. So when he gets back after a rough opening schedule, I think Jameis Winston's second half of the year and really the last 3 quarters, most of the year that he's going to play, I think is going to be really valuable. He's got the best weapons that he's ever had. A year 2 O.J. Howard, a year 2 Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Cameron Bray. I really do think there will be fantasy points to be had here.
Now, we after the suspension, Jameis was a breakout in our Ultimate Draft Kit. He's not in there right now due to some of the those factors that you mentioned, but the upside is still there. It's just a matter of at that time you were drafting him. Right now, yeah. Mike, you've been prescribing a hands-off approach to Jameis Winston and a wait and grab him off the waiver wire later.
Yeah, and that's why. You don't have to – it's not a Mark Ingram situation. It's not Julian Edelman where if you want them on your team, you're going to have to grab and stash. Jameis Winston, I would be shocked if you're in a single quarterback league and someone is drafting Jameis Winston – they are wasting a bench spot.
They're doing it wrong.
Because a quarterback clogging up your roster for 3 weeks that you can't even use is just such a
bad decision.
It's a bad decision. It's a waste of an asset. But Jameis Winston was a yardage machine. When he came back from his shoulder injury, those final 5 weeks of the season, he hit 300 yards 2 times, 299, so essentially threw 300 yards in 3 of those 5 games. His fewest yardage total was 270 yards. That's a pace of over 5K, the elusive 5,000-yard mark. Jameis Winston puts up big yards. We need to get those touchdown numbers up. But if you are, let's say, you go with Andy's method of Tyrod Taylor. You grab him early. You play him those first 3 weeks. Then when Baker takes over in week 4, you just grab Jameis Winston.
Off of the waivers. It's just really important because usually we don't even – I don't hardly ever even draft 2 quarterbacks. So to draft a second quarterback that isn't going to play for 3 weeks feels really bad.
All right, let's talk about Ronald Jones. For me, the Ronald Jones situation is simple. He's the best running back by a wide margin on this team. I believe he's a much better running back than Peyton Barber, who had value by necessity last season. Charles Sims hasn't been able to stay healthy or involved or relevant for fantasy. And Dirk Cutter really likes Ronald Jones. This was an investment in the running back position. Dirk Cutter's come out. He says, I have faith in Ronald Jones. I see how he works. I see the explosiveness. I have faith in him, and the preseason is going to be a part of how big of a role he's going to have. But they like everything about Ronald Jones, and I liked everything that he did at USC. So
he scares the tar off of me.
Yeah,
because I've put him on blast so much, and he has an absolute path to fantasy relevance. I worry that he's not going to catch the ball and that he's not going to be a true workhorse if Peyton Barber and Charles Sims are involved, and it's not going to be a great team. They're not going to be in winning situations. But like I just said, there's going to be fantasy points to be had for the Bucs, and if he does take over that role and surprises in the pass-catching game, then he's a great pick in the 5th round.
You kind of understand why they picked him, because last year the Bucs were 27th in the league in rushing yards, 27th in yards per carry, which doesn't speak well of whomever was in there, 25th in rushing touchdowns. This was not a team that could move the ball on the ground consistently, so I think that they want to usher in a new situation there. Mike, I don't feel like you've really weighed in very much on the Ronald Jones. You've left it for me and Jason to sling the mud at each other.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Andy.
Do you even know what he thinks?
I don't have a clue.
No, I do.
Because I lean more with Jason of he will be a bust for his draft value.
You lean more.
Oh, man. Thank you. But here's my problem with Ronald Jones. Charles Sims is the 3rd down back. He's That's what he's working as in training camp. That's what he can specialize at. Ronald Jones does not have pass catching in his college production profile. That doesn't mean he can't do it. But you already have a guy who's been great in that role for that team for a few years. They've talked about Peyton Barber and Ronald Jones for at least the first few weeks are going to be splitting time. When you're investing a pick in a guy that is only going to get that first and second down work, and then he's going to have to share that work with Peyton Barber, who's Ronald Jones is probably a better running back than Peyton Barber, but Barber is a serviceable running back who's been in the league and proven it in the NFL.
15 touches through the first, on average
per
for
game?
Ronald Jones for the first 4 weeks.
Under.
I'll take the under.
15 touches?
Yeah, so here's my advice for Ronald Jones. If are a believer in Ronald Jones, trade for him after he's disappointing in the first 2 weeks because he's sharing touches.
I think you're right that he may have a monstrous preseason game, and that may jack his ADP.
Yeah, he is one Amir Abdullah play away from jumping into the fourth back of the third round.
I can't wait for preseason. I just realized that.
Tomorrow.
I cannot wait.
Yeah.
You are speaking the truth.
Yes, it starts in reality. It starts tomorrow. But Ronald Jones, I really think in those first few games is going to be sharing carries with Peyton Barber. By the end of the year, by maybe the halfway mark, Ronald Jones could push Barber to the side.
Yeah,
but
that happens a lot with rookies.
Yes, but you're going to have to put a big investment into Ronald Jones.
I'm going to jump into the interview we had with Ronald Jones, a brief one, but not without asking the question of O.J. Howard and Cameron Brate, so you can give fantasy owners a moment of insight to the tight end situation.
Look, I still take Cameron Brate, and it used to be a lock solid easy call, but it's really not. O.J. Howard is the clear better prospect. He's a freak
more
athlete, more
far.
explosive, but he's also a better athlete to his detriment in the fact that he is used in the running game a lot. And I think that what's going to happen even in year 2 with O.J. Howard is that he will, because he's such a good blocker, he's going to have more of those plays where he gets wide open down the sideline, has that, because that's not the guy that the defense is targeting on. He's not the normal route running tight end. That's going to be Cameron Brate, which means for fantasy purposes, if that plays out, that you're not going to always know when to be able to start O.J. Howard. And at the end of the year, he might have a really nice line because he had a couple big touchdowns, but you weren't able to necessarily predict that, whereas Cameron Brate is more of the between the 20s, and he's also still used in the red zone.
Yeah.
So I would go Brate as of right now. The ceiling is higher with O.J. Howard. If they just opened him up and said, hey, we're going to use you in the passing game, then he would be a beast.
I agree that that's what could happen for Howard, and that's where I lean. I took a look at the Cameron Brate contract because he got an extension, much to the surprise of everyone, and this thing is a 6-year, near $41 million deal.
Agent did work.
That's like a hockey contract.
But if you actually look at the deal, it's
an early out.
It's $7 million guaranteed, so he's $7 million against the cap this season. After that, there is no dead money for the Cameron Brate contract. So somehow
GM did work.
Somehow he signed a 6-year deal that is, in fact, a 1-year contract if they want it to be that.
Interesting.
That's crazy.
All right, let's wrap this show up with a conversation with second-round running back
RoJo
from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Yeah, RoJo, Ronald Jones II.
You talking to me?
Hey, Andy Holloway here with Ronald Jones II.
Yes, sir.
Talk about the arrival to the NFL. What was it like being drafted and then going to Tampa Bay? What were your expectations?
Yeah, it was crazy, man. I got there sometime right after the draft, and then OTAs, rookie mini camp, that stuff, that heat hit me the first couple of days. Being in Cali, I was spoiled, but I got back to my Texas roots, so I'm good now.
Humidity?
Yeah.
So, look, the NFL, they drill you down, and you got to run the 40. You got to do these drills. You're never going to do them again in your whole life, and they tell you what you can do and what you can't do.
Yes, sir.
So tell me what you do. Tell me what you think you can do. What do you expect from yourself in both the run game and the passing game?
I expect a lot. I got to hold myself to, high expectations because obviously, where they took me and, they believe in me. So, just trying to be the best I can be. It's a process, Still haven't played a game yet. Yeah, so I'm just go from there, break down the tape as much as I can and just become a student of the game.
Yeah, we had Dirk Cutter out in Arizona as the ASU coach for quite a while, and obviously you got the opportunity to work with him and Jameis and some veterans over there. Year one, you said you follow fantasy a little bit. Do you have expectations for how you perform? I know the team line. You want to do everything you can do, but what are your own expectations for yourself?
Personally, I just want to, come and make an impact. My name is called, my number's called. I just want to make plays.
Go out there and
whatever I'm asked to do, step up and block, run routes, return, whatever it may be.
Do you pride yourself on being able to move into that pass-catching role? They didn't ask a lot of you at USA in that role, but from what I saw in film, it feels like you have the ability to excel there.
Most definitely, and that's something that, I'm looking forward to showing people, this year, fantasy football players as well. So,
yeah.
Because I know the PPRs and all that stuff, so, I'm looking forward to all that stuff.
Do you embrace fantasy football? Do you like it when the fans come up and they look at that type of thing from you, or do you prefer to stay away from that?
Yeah, I don't like it too much when they come up, and tell you, hey, you only got me some points, but I know it's a game for them, and they got to get their money. So,
okay. And Jameis and Evans and all them, have you been had an opportunity to spend time with them, and have they welcomed you into the team?
Yeah, most definitely. They told me from day one, I got to come in here and work, to get on their level. So they just trying to make me better, and I spent some one-on-ones with Jameis, just looking at the playbook, trying to read defenses, things like that.
All right, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
All right, that about does it for this episode of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Excited about preseason football tomorrow. I do want to reiterate the very exciting news that we opened the show with, namely that we have partnered with the American Cancer Society and the NFL's Crucial Catch program. A portion of every Ultimate Draft Kit purchase will go to benefit the American Cancer Society's Crucial Catch partnership with the NFL. The NFL and its players are committed to saving lives from cancer, and so that's why we've made this partnership. We want to be a part of that, and they focus on prevention and early detection of multiple cancers. If you want to learn more about that program, you can go to cancer.org/Crucial Catch. So again, every purchase of the Ultimate Draft Kit will go to benefit that very important program. That does it for this episode of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Check us out each and every day during the entire season. Thank you for joining us.
Play some best ball at draft.com/ballers. See you tomorrow. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Join our fantasy football community on jointhefoot.com and follow us on Twitter @TheFFBallers.